Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to our Sunday Bhagavatam class. A couple of weeks ago, we started chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Chapter 2 is titled Divinity and Divine Service. In this particular chapter, a few of the questions that were posed by the sages of Naimisharanya to Suta Goswami are answered. So, just to recollect what we read, the first 5 shlokas, we'll just quickly review the translation of these shlokas. Ugrashrava, who is Suta Goswami, the son of Romaharshana, being fully satisfied by the perfect questions of the Brahmanas, thanked them and thus attempted to reply. So this particular chapter begins with Suta Goswami beginning to address the Brahmanas who are gathered there. Srila Suta Goswami said, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto that great sage Shukadeva Goswami, who can enter the hearts of all. When he went away to take up the renounced order of life, sannyasa, leaving home without undergoing reformation by the sacred thread or the ceremonies observed by the higher castes, his father, Vyasadeva, fearing separation from him, cried out, 'O my son, indeed, only the trees which were absorbed in the same feelings of separation echoed in response to the bereaved father.' So the father could only hear the echo of him calling out to his son to come back. So in this particular purport, if we recall, Prabhupada states that, normally as per Varnashrama Dharma, you are supposed to go through the stages of the process, starting with student life to Grahastha life, then Vanaprastha, and then finally to sannyas. But here in this rare occasion where Shukadeva Goswami leaves immediately after his birth because he is a completely self-realized soul, there is nothing for him to learn. The sacred thread ceremony, Prabhupada writes, is our spiritual birth. We have our material father and mother who gave physical birth to us. And then when we get to the Gayatri Mantra, that is our second birth, that is our spiritual birth, where we are attached to our spiritual masters. Therefore, the spiritual master will also change your name to indicate that you are no longer that karmi who was named by your parents. When your spiritual master changes your name, that is your new identity. So your spiritual identity begins with the receiving of the Mahamantra. Of course, here the sacred thread ceremony involves the Gayatri Mantra. So then Shukadeva Goswami says, Suta Goswami says, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him, Shuka, the spiritual master of all sages, the son of Vyasadeva, who out of his great compassion for those gross materialists who struggle to cross over the darkest regions of material existence, spoke this most confidential supplement to the cream of Vedic knowledge after having personally assimilated it by experience." So the cream of Vedic knowledge is actually this Srimad Bhagavatam. Actually, the Vedanta Sutra, the natural, Prabhupada writes in that particular purport that the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is actually Srimad Bhagavatam. The Vedanta Sutra was compiled by Vyasadeva as a summary of the essence of all the Vedic scriptures. But even the Vedanta Sutra, the aphorisms are difficult to understand. They are like little snippets that summarize the essence of everything. Athato Brahma Jignasa, Aham Brahmasmi, like this. These aphorisms are also very difficult to understand. Therefore, Prabhupada writes in the purport that the natural commentary on the Vedanta Sutra is actually Srimad Bhagavatam. And this Srimad Bhagavatam is the creme de la creme, as they say, the highest and the sweetest of all knowledge. Then Suta Goswami says, before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest. One should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayana, unto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. So, anytime you begin speaking about the purest and the highest of the scriptures, then you take refuge in the parampara. Here in this parampara, Suta Goswami is first glorifying his Gurudev, Shukadev Goswami, then the Lord himself, then Naranarayan Rishi, then Mother Saraswati, and finally Srila Vyasa. So he is invoking the blessings of all of the parampara, all the way up to the Supreme Lord, before he even begins to touch the topic of bhakti in Srimad Bhagavad. The last shloka that we stopped at was shloka number 5. O sages, I have been justly questioned by you. Your questions are worthy because they relate to Lord Krishna and so are of relevance to the world's welfare. Only questions of this sort are capable of completely satisfying the self. So now Suta Goswami is acknowledging the beauty and the importance of the 6 questions posed by the sages of Naimisharanya. Why? Because all these questions are connected to Lord Krishna. And anything connected to Lord Krishna must be for the best welfare of all of the Jivatmas in all of the lokas. And he further concludes by saying only questions of this sort, that are existential questions, are actually capable of completely satisfying the Atma. With that, we will go to shloka number 6. So 1.2.6. Savai pumsam paro dharmaha
Savai pumsam paro dharmaha
yato bhaktir adhokshaje
yato bhaktir adhokshaje
ahaitokya pratihata
ahaitukya pratihata
yayatma suprasidati.
yayatma suprasidati.
Word for word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Saha,
Saha,
that,
that,
why,
why,
certainly,
certainly,
pumsam,
pumsam,
for mankind,
for mankind,
paraha,
paraha,
sublime,
sublime,
dharmaha,
dharmaha,
occupation,
occupation,
yataha,
yataha,
by which,
by which
bhaktihi,
bhaktihi,
devotional service,
devotional service,
adhokshaje,
adhokshaje,
unto the transcendence,
unto the transcendence,
ahaituki,
ahaituki,
causeless,
causeless,
apratihata,
apratihata,
unbroken,
unbroken,
yaya,
yaya,
by which
by which
atma,
atma,
the self,
the self,
suprasidati,
suprasidati,
completely satisfied.
completely satisfied.
Translation: the supreme occupation,
The supreme occupation,
dharma,
dharma,
for all humanity
for all humanity
is that by which
is that by which
men can attain
man can attain
to loving devotional service
to loving devotional service
unto the transcendent Lord.
unto the transcendent Lord.
Such devotional service
Such devotional service
must be unmotivated
must be unmotivated
and uninterrupted
and uninterrupted
to completely satisfy the self.
to completely satisfy the self.
This 6th shloka answers the very first question that was asked in chapter 1, which is, what is the Loka Kalyan, which is what should be done for the benefit of all humanity? What is it that humanity should follow that will benefit? So Suta Goswami is answering that question here. The supreme occupation, dharma. There are a lot of dharmas actually, but there is one dharma that trumps or is the top priority for everybody. That comes first. What is that supreme dharma for all of humanity? Remember, the question was, what is it that the people should do for their own good? What is the topmost priority for them? And the topmost priority is that by which men can attain to loving, devotional service unto the transcendent Lord, which means our goal is bhakti. Our only goal is bhakti. There is no other goal. Every other goal, every other dharma, rules and regulations that we follow act as kinkaras, or they are children of this primary goal. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self, which means there should be no cause for this bhakti. And this bhakti should never cease. So it should be causeless and it should be ceaseless. This is the ultimate goal for all of humanity. This is the priority for all of humanity. So this answers the first question that the sages asked. Let us see what Prabhupada writes in the purport. This shloka is a very, very, very famous shloka. In many, many, many purports, Prabhupada quotes this particular shloka. Savai pumsam paro dharma yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahaitukiya pratihata yayatma suprasidati. Ahaituki and apratihata. Prabhupada translates this as unmotivated and uninterrupted, which means it's never ending. And there is no reason for you to perform bhakti other than to love the Supreme. So Prabhupada writes, in this statement, Sri Suta Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that fallen people or the people in general might easily take it up. So the second question that the sages ask are, what is the essence of all Vedic scriptures? That answer actually comes in the seventh shloka. But what should be the Loka Kalyan for the general public, the general population, the Jivatmas? It is learning to love the Supreme Lord, performing bhakti. The Vedas prescribed two different types of occupation for the human being. One is called the pravritti marga, or the path of sense enjoyment, and the other is called the nivritti marga, or the path of renunciation. So there is bhoktaram, that is if we choose to enjoy, that is called pravritti marg. And then the mukti marg, which is the path of renunciation, which is to give up everything for the sole purposes of serving the Supreme Lord. There is also the bhakti marg, which is even higher than this nivritti marg. The path of enjoyment is inferior, and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. So sacrifice is a must, this part of bhakti. The material existence of the living being is a diseased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence or Brahma Bhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. So when we are chasing material things, we can assume, as Prabhupada says rightly here, that we are actually very diseased. We are in a diseased state. We've forgotten what the primary purpose of life is. So Prabhupada says, for a Jivatma, your life only begins when you start performing bhakti, or at least you begin the journey by inquiring about what is the truth. So actual life is spiritual existence or Brahma Bhuta existence, where life is eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. Dukkhalayam, ashashvatam. There is no happiness at all. There is just a futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. We're always trying to avoid difficult situations. And when we don't face any difficult situations, we call that period of our life as being very peaceful and happy. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful, and all cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation, which is the highest dharma. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Renunciation or abnegation, abnegation means to give up, for ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in the diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. As long as we keep feeding our material desires, your diseased condition is only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. So actually, I was listening, we'll come back to the rest of the purport. I was listening to His Grace Gauranga Darshan. Prabhu was explaining that the topmost dharma, there are two levels of dharma that are mentioned here. Yato bhaktir adhokshaje, which is everybody must perform bhakti. This is called sadhana bhakti, in the sense that we have to begin somewhere and it begins with our sadhana. Sadhana means whatever the Guru instructs you to do, which is chanting X number of rounds, observing Ekadesi, waking up early in the morning, attending Mangala Arathi, or if you're not able to attend the temple program, then you should do some short Mangala Arathi at home, worshipping Tulsi Devi, circumambulating Tulsi Devi, reading the Bhagavad Gita, doing Sankirtan, associating with Vaishnavas, honoring only Prasadam. So, Yato Bhaktir Adhokshaje, meaning the first stage of bhakti is sadhana bhakti. Ahaituki apratihata, that is a stage of bhava bhakti, where that is where it is unmotivated and uninterrupted love for the Lord. Until then, we are all in the sadhana bhakti stage. We are all sadhakas. Of course, even in the bhava stage, the personalities who are already in that bhava stage, they are also performing their sadhana. They never give up their sadhana. But at the same time, they experience natural outpouring of love for the Lord, and that never stops. And they don't have a motive to do so, just for the sheer joy of loving the Lord. So within this particular shloka, there are two levels of bhakti indicated based on the commentary by other acharyas, which is sadhana bhakti and bhava bhakti, which is the sadhana stage where you begin by following the prescribed rules and regulations until you reach the stage where rules and regulations, although they do not matter to you, you do it willingly and lovingly. In the beginning, as sadhana bhaktas, we have to force ourselves to follow these rules and regulations. It's not easy for us to wake up early in the morning. It's not easy for us to enjoy all 16 rounds of chanting, all 2 hours of chanting, to be completely focused on the Supreme Lord. It's not easy for us. We have to force ourselves to do it. This is sadhana bhakti. Until you reach that bhava stage where it is unmotivated and uninterrupted. So Prabhupada says, Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality. That is, without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should therefore accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive action, and philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in his service, which means you find ultimate bliss when you are constantly serving the Supreme God. But in the beginning, our bhakti is polluted with material desires. That's what Prabhupada is explaining. Ultimately, you need to let go of all of your material desires and reach that stage where you don't care for anything except performing bhakti. Even though you may still be in your different ashramas, you are still performing your duties and responsibilities in your respective ashrams. Nevertheless, you reach that stage where nothing material matters to you. We have purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is that which sustains one's existence. A living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord Krishna. Krishna is the central pivot of living beings, and he is the all attractive living entity or eternal form amongst all other living beings or eternal forms. Each and every living being has his eternal form in the spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Prabhupada is simply saying all of us have an eternal spiritual form in the spiritual world, and in that form, our eternal preoccupation is to be always attracted to Krishna and therefore always serve Him. Krishna is the complete whole, and everything else is His part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. The servant's duty is to serve the master. Krishna is our master. It is transcendental and is completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This relation of servant and the served is the most congenial form of intimacy. Um, all of us have a unique relationship with Krishna. I was listening to multiple lectures today. One of the lectures was by His Grace Amarendra Prabhu in Chaupati Temple. And he was talking about how Mother Yashoda, when the gopis say, we also want to share in the love of the Supreme Lord. Of course, for them, they don't acknowledge um, Nanda Gopal as the Supreme Lord. So Mother Yashoda is quite possessive. She tells the other gopis, no, he is mine and he's mine alone. He does not belong to you. So Amarendra Prabhu was using a wonderful analogy of it's not a joint account, it's a individual account that I have. So like that, each of us have a unique relationship with Krishna, and none of us want to share that Krishna with others. So we all have that unique relationship, and that is what Prabhupada is talking about, that intimacy. So Mother Yashoda's relationship with Krishna is deeply intimate as the mother. But each of us have our own intimate relationship with Krishna back in the spiritual world, in our original spiritual form. One can realize it as devotional service progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditional state of material existence. So we can't say, wait a minute, I can't practice bhakti because I'm not pure. How do I know what my original relationship with Krishna is? But purity doesn't exist unless you actually start the process of performing sadhana bhakti. And therefore, Prabhupada says that as you progress in your devotional service, maybe in one life, maybe in multiple lives, we don't know. Eventually, you will know what is your original spiritual form and the rasa in which you will be serving the Supreme Lord. So even if you're impure, you can start this process because bhakti does not need any pre-qualification except to know that you want to love the Supreme Lord. That will gradually give one the clue to actual life and please Him to complete satisfaction. So, the answer to the first question is the only occupation for all of the jivatmas who are occupying the human body is to learn to love the Supreme Lord, Krishna. And this love, once you learn to love the Supreme Lord, will ultimately culminate in causeless and ceaseless service to the Supreme Lord. With that, we come to the next shloka, which is shloka number 7. Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha
Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha
Janayatyashu Vairagyam
Janayatyashu Vairagyam
Jnanam Chayadahaitukam.
Jnanam Chayadahaitukam.
Word for word meaning. Vasudeve,
Vasudeve
unto Krishna.
unto Krishna.
Bhagavati,
Bhagavati
unto the personality of Godhead.
unto the personality of Godhead.
Bhakti Yogaha,
Bhakti Yogaha
contact of devotional service.
contact of devotional service.
Prayojitaha,
Prayojitaha
being applied.
being applied.
Janayati,
Janayati
thus produce.
does produce.
Ashu,
Ashu
very soon.
very soon.
Vairagyam,
Vairagyam
detachment.
detachment.
Jnanam,
Jnanam
knowledge.
knowledge.
Cha,
Cha
and
and
yat,
yet
that which.
that which.
Ahaitukam,
Ahaitukam
causeless.
causeless.
Translation. By rendering devotional service
By rendering devotional service
unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna,
unto the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna,
one immediately acquires
one immediately acquires
causeless knowledge
causeless knowledge
and detachment from the world.
and detachment from the world.
So here is the answer to the second question that the sages have asked. The second question was, what is the essence of all the Vedic scriptures? The essence of all Vedic scriptures is that by learning to serve the Supreme Lord Krishna, you acquire complete knowledge and at the same time acquire complete detachment from the material world. So, this is the essence of all Vedic scriptures that is answered in this particular shloka. Let's see what Prabhupada writes in the purport. Those who consider devotional service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna to be something like material emotional affairs may argue that in the revealed scriptures, sacrifice, charity, austerity, knowledge, mystic powers, and similar other processes of transcendental realization are recommended. According to them, bhakti, or the devotional service of the Lord, is meant for those who cannot perform the high grade activities. Generally, in our culture, it is understood erroneously that unless one really deeply studies all the Vedas, one has not reached the highest stage of self realization. Therefore, such individuals who believe that studying of the Vedas is the topmost priority and as the highest objective, they seem to forget that one can reach the supreme abode just by performing bhakti. Therefore, they see bhakti as being something very sentimental, something very emotional. It's meant for people who are weak hearted and weak minded and don't have much intelligence. However, the whole Srimad Bhagavatam puts bhakti as the topmost objective and goal. Bhakti is the goal and bhakti is also the outcome. Only by performing bhakti you will actually achieve the goal of bhakti. And there is no cause for bhakti other than bhakti itself. Which means bhakti can only produce bhakti. The objective is bhakti and the goal is the way to achieve that goal is also bhakti. So everything is in its pure essence just bhakti. Generally, it is said that the bhakti cult is meant for the Shudras, Vaishyas, and the less intelligent women class. But that is not the actual fact. The bhakti cult is the topmost of all transcendental activities, and therefore it is simultaneously sublime and easy. It is sublime for the pure devotees who are serious about getting in contact with the Supreme Lord, and it is easy for the neophytes who are just on the threshold of the house of bhakti. So the devotees who are really serious about their sadhana, for them getting in touch with the Supreme Lord and establishing or re-establishing that personal connect is the highest priority. For those who are new, bhakti is the most easiest thing. It doesn't require a high IQ. It doesn't require a high pedigree. It is not restricted to any varna or any ashrama. Anybody can perform bhakti. To achieve the contact of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is a great science. And it is open for all living beings, including the Shudras, Vaishyas, women, and those lower than the low-born Shudras. So what to speak of the high-class men like the qualified Brahmanas and the great self-realized kings. So this bhakti, there is no exclusivity clause. It's open to all. Anybody can perform bhakti. You need not be born in India to perform. You need not be pure to perform bhakti. The only qualification, if at all there is a qualification, is you have to have some faith that this process will work, that this journey will get you there. The other high grade activities designated as sacrifice, charity, austerity, etc., are all corollary factors following the pure and scientific bhakti cult, which means that all the other so-called higher activities like jnana yoga, etc. So jnana yoga without bhakti is not considered to be topmost jnana yoga. Jnana yoga with bhakti is considered to be top. Similarly, karma yoga without bhakti is not considered top class. Karma yoga with bhakti is considered top class. So everything ultimately dovetails and fits into bhakti. The objective of studying the Vedic scriptures is to learn to love the Supreme Lord. So the objective of studying the Vedic scriptures is not to become a great pandit and memorize all the shlokas. Of course, that is part of, you could say, a goal. But the ultimate goal is actually to learn to love the Supreme Lord. So the principles of knowledge, jnana and vairagya, the principles of knowledge and detachment are two important factors on the path of transcendental realization. If you remember, many months ago, we would have, in the introduction to Srimad Bhagavatam, we would have heard about how Bhakti Devi is traveling all over India. And although she stays young, her two children, knowledge and detachment, become old. And only by hearing about the Supreme Lord do her two sons retain their uh, youthfulness. So you have to remember this. The principles of knowledge and detachment are two important factors on the path of transcendental realization. Knowledge is important, detachment is important, but you automatically get both knowledge and detachment as per this particular shloka simply by performing bhakti. You don't have to strive for it separately. The whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything material and spiritual. And the results of such perfect knowledge are that one becomes detached from material affection and becomes attached to spiritual activities. So, if you are detached from something, that means your attachment has to go towards something else. You can't be in this negative stage of no attachment at all. If you have no attachment to something, it means you have attachment towards something else. So, by performing bhakti over a period of time, your attachment will become stronger and stronger and stronger towards the Supreme Lord. And when your attachment to the Supreme Lord becomes stronger, automatically your attachment to material things will reduce. So, you don't have to strive hard to do it separately. Becoming detached from material things does not mean becoming inert altogether, as men with a poor fund of knowledge think. So it's not like if you give up material things, you become useless, you don't have any purpose in life. No, that's not how it works. Naishkarma means not undertaking activities that will produce good or bad effects. Negation does not mean negation of the positive. Negation of the non essentials does not mean negation of the essential. Similarly, detachment from material forms does not mean nullifying the positive form. The bhakti cult is meant for the realization of the positive form. When the positive form is realized, the negative forms are automatically eliminated. Therefore, with the development of the bhakti cult, with the application of positive service to the positive form, one naturally becomes detached from inferior things and he becomes attached to superior things. Lord Krishna talks about this in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, where he tells Arjuna, you know, one should acquire higher tastes, then you can give up lower tastes. Similarly, the bhakti cult, being the supermost occupation of the living beings, leads him out of material sense enjoyment. That is the sign of a pure devotee. He's not a fool, nor is he engaged in the inferior energy, nor does he have material values. This is not possible by dry reasoning. It actually happens by the grace of the Almighty. In conclusion, one who is a pure devotee has all other good qualities, namely knowledge, detachment, etc. But one who has only knowledge or detachment is not necessarily well acquainted with the principles of the bhakti cult. Bhakti is the supermost occupation of the human being. So, if you develop the qualities of knowledge and vairagya, jnana and vairagya, knowledge and detachment, it does not mean you have achieved love for the Supreme Lord. But if you have achieved love for the Supreme Lord, then you have already achieved complete knowledge and detachment. So, this shloka is also a very, very important shloka that Prabhupada quotes quite often, which takes us to the 8th shloka of chapter 2. Dharmasvanushthithah pumsam
Dharma swanushtitah pumsam
vishvaksena kathasuyah
vishvaksena kathasu yaha
notpadayet yadiratim
notpadayed yadi ratim
shrama eva hi kevalam.
shrama eva hi kevalam.
So this begins a new section, which we will go back to the slides after we finish the word for word meaning and the translation. Dharmaha,
Dharmaha,
occupation.
occupation.
Swanushtitaha,
Swanushtitaha,
executed in terms of one's own position.
executed in terms of one's own position.
Pumsam,
Pumsam,
of humankind.
of humankind.
Vishvaksena,
Vishvaksena,
personality of Godhead.
the personality of Godhead.
Plenary portion.
Plenary portion.
Kathasu,
Kathasu,
in the message of.
in the message of
Yaha,
Yah,
what is.
what is.
Na,
No,
not.
not.
Utpadayet,
Utpadayet,
thus produce.
thus produce.
Yadi,
Yadi,
if.
if.
Ratim,
Ratim,
attraction.
attraction.
Shramaha,
Shramaha,
useless labor.
useless labor.
Eva,
Eva,
only.
only.
He,
He,
certainly.
certainly.
Kevalam,
Kevalam,
entirely.
entirely.
Translation. The occupational activities
The occupational activities
a man performs
a man performs
according to his own position
according to his own position
are only so much useless labor
are only so much useless labor
if they do not provoke
if they do not provoke
attraction
attraction
for the message
for the message
of the personality of Godhead.
of the personality of Godhead.
So this section actually begins a new section. So let me just share the slide with you. So far we have covered the first 7 shlokas where Sutta Goswami is replying to the sages after they have addressed him, glorified him, and then requested him to kindly clarify some of the doubts that they have. So Sutta Goswami begins by offering obeisances to the Parampara, to the Supreme Lord, to Naranayana Rishi, to Saraswati Devi, and finally to Vyasadeva. And then in Shloka 5, Sutta Goswami has glorified the questions asked by the Naimisaranya sages. And in Shloka 6 and 7, he has answered question 1 and question 2. Question 1 and 2, the answer is the same. What is going to be for the good of humanity? Bhakti. What is the essence of all Vedic scriptures? Bhakti. So the answer to question 1 and 2 is both bhakti only. So we now begin the next segment of chapter 2, which is Shloka 8 to 15. That, remember, in a previous shloka, Prabhupada had spoken about Varnashram. That when Shukadeva Goswami leaves his household without undergoing the thread ceremony, without going any other reformatory processes, he has already left to become a sannyasi. In that context, Prabhupada writes about Varnashram. So this Varnashrama, Sutta Goswami is going to say that the ultimate purpose of any Varna and any ashrama that you are in, ultimate purpose for all Varnas and all ashrama is bhakti only. So what are our duties and goals is going to be covered in shlokas 8 to 10. We'll see if we can finish the next 2 shlokas also. In shloka number 11, what are the 3 features of the absolute truth, which is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan? How you can realize the supreme absolute truth by devotional service is in shloka 12. How devotional service is actually the only purpose of Varnashrama. The Lord creates Varnashrama as he states in the Bhagavad Gita. But the reason he creates the Varnashrama is for you to discover him, for you to reconnect with him, for you to develop pure love for him. So hearing, glorifying, remembering, and worshipping the Lord is the only thing we all are supposed to do. It's the primary thing we are supposed to do. And how does remembering the Lord help us? It cuts the knots of karma. And therefore, Suta Goswami asks, who would not want to hear about the Supreme Lord, knowing fully well what benefits that one is going to get? So, coming back to the purport. So, in this particular shloka, Suta Goswami is saying that the occupational activities a man performs according to his own position, which means you may in different varna, different ashram. So, whichever one you occupy are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the personality of Godhead. So essentially, Sutta Goswami is saying all of us are so busy with our so many different duties and responsibilities based on so many different identities. If any of those duties and responsibilities that we are performing does not provoke in us an attraction for the Supreme Lord, then Sutta Goswami is saying everything is just an absolute waste of energy. Our trying to accumulate wealth is a waste of energy if we're not connected to Krishna. Our trying to accumulate many, many degrees, educational qualifications is a waste of energy if we're not connected to Krishna. So, like this, whatever it is that we're chasing in life, it's of no use unless you're connected to Krishna. So Prabhupada writes, there are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conceptions of life. To the gross materialist who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there is nothing beyond the senses. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. So, when we are trying to acquire material things, we are doing it for our satisfaction. That is selfishness. So, bhukti is selfishness when you're trying to satisfy yourself. Mukti is also selfishness. Why is mukti selfishness? Because in mukti, you're interested in getting rid of your troublesome ways of life. You want to free yourself up of anxiety. So even mukti is considered to be selfish pursuit. Because in mukti, there is an I. The I says, I don't want any more anxiety. I don't want any more birth and death. That I factor is still there, and therefore that is also considered. Bhakti is considered higher than mukti because in bhakti, you don't care, you just want to be connected to the Supreme. You don't care which planetary system, which type of body you're occupying, and what your condition of life is. All you want is to be connected to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, only bhakti can be selfless because in bhakti, your mood is to serve the Lord without caring for yourself. So everything else, Prabhupada writes so beautifully here. It is just concentrated selfishness. It centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and world with a view to gross bodily comfort. Ultimately, bhukti is for yourself. Mukti is also for yourself. Above these gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft in the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness limited to the body and mind. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void. But less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. So, as we have read in the Bhagavad Gita, if we are preoccupied with ourselves, then there's no room for Krishna. But if we begin on the path of bhakti, even if we still have tinges of material desires, it's better than being preoccupied with just material desires. Even if you're doing karma yoga and you're connected to Krishna, that's far better than being a karmi completely. Because foolish people have no information of the soul and how it is beyond the purview of the body and mind, they are not satisfied in the performance of their occupational duties. The question of the satisfaction of the self is raised herein. The self is beyond the gross body and subtle mind. He is the potent active principle of the body and mind. Without knowing the need of the dormant soul, one cannot be happy simply with the emolument of the body and mind. Emolument means different kinds of attributes that you gather that helps your body and your mind, like decorations, you could say. The body and the mind are but superfluous outer coverings of the spirit soul. The spirit soul's needs must be fulfilled. Must be fulfilled. Simply by cleansing the cage of the bird, one does not satisfy the bird. One must actually know the needs of the bird itself. So, only focusing on the external is not going to help you. We need to focus on the spirit soul. One must feed the spirit soul. One must make sure we take care of the spirit soul. The need of the spirit soul is that he wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill his desire for complete freedom. Complete freedom comes when you're serving the Supreme, causeless and ceaseless. He wants to get out of the covered walls of the greater universe. He wants to see the free light and the spirit. That complete freedom is achieved when he meets the complete spirit, the personality of God. There is a dormant affection for God within everyone. Because we are all eternally connected to the Supreme Lord, there is always love for God within us. It's just that love is covered. Therefore, Prabhupada is saying there is a dormant affection for God within everyone. Spiritual existence is manifested through the gross body and mind in the form of perverted affection for gross and subtle matter. So, even though we have love for the Lord, our love instead is directed towards physical things. Our love is directed towards matter and not towards spirit. And the more our love is directed towards matter and not spirit, the further and further away we move from the Supreme. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in occupational engagements that will evoke our divine consciousness. So, Prabhupada says that spark is there already within us. And Prabhupada would use the analogy of somebody has to come and fan that spark. That spark could be another devotee, could be the scriptures, could be Guru, could be service to the Supreme Lord. Suddenly, your devotion gets fanned and becomes a blazing fire. Therefore, we have to engage ourselves in occupational engagements that will evoke our divine consciousness. This is possible only by hearing and chanting the divine activities of the Supreme Lord, Shravanam Kirtan. Everything begins with Shravanam Kirtan. And any occupational activity which does not help one to achieve attachment for hearing and chanting the transcendental message of Godhead is said herein to be simply a waste of time. So any hearing and chanting you do must revolve around Krishna. If you hear and chant other things, it's not going to. This is because other occupational duties, whatever ism they may belong to, cannot give liberation to the soul. Even the activities of the salvationists, salvation means you're looking for an escape route. Even the activities of the salvationists are considered to be useless because of their failure to pick up the fountainhead of all liberties. The gross materialist can practically see that his material gain is limited only to time and space. either in this world or in the other. So we're reading chapter 11 of the Bhagavad Gita. We're doing the Sloka a day in the morning classes. What is different about the Vishwarupa Darshan that the Lord gives Arjuna is that causes so much fear is that everything is destroyed and consumed by time. And Krishna says, when Arjuna, perturbed, asks Krishna, "Who are you?" Krishna says, "I am time and I have come to destroy it." So even a materialist understands that at the time of death, he has to give up whatever he has accumulated. Even if he goes up to the Svargaloka, he will find no permanent abode for his hankering soul. The hankering soul must be satisfied by the perfect scientific process of perfect devotional service. So in this particular shloka, Suta Goswami has said, irregardless of whatever varna ashrama we occupy, if whatever that we are doing, if that doesn't evoke love for Godhead, then whatever we are doing and we are keeping ourselves busy doing all these things is simply a waste of energy. So this brings us to shloka number 9. Dharmasyapavargyasya
Dharmasya hyapavargyasya
narthorthayopakalpate
nartho thayopakalpate
narthasya dharmaikantasya
natasya dharmaikantasya
kamo labhaya hi smritah.
kamo labhaya hi smrutah.
Word for word meaning. Dharmasya,
Dharmasya,
occupational engagement.
occupational engagement.
He,
Certainly.
apavargyasya,
Apavargyasya,
ultimate liberation.
ultimate liberation.
Na,
No,
not.
not.
Arthaha,
Arthaha,
end.
end.
Arthaya,
Arthaya,
material gain.
for material gain.
Upakalpate
Upakalpate
is meant for.
is meant for.
Na,
No,
neither.
neither.
Arthasya,
Arthasya,
of material gain.
of material gain.
Dharma eka antasya,
Dharma eka antasya,
for one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service.
for one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service.
Kamaha,
Kamaha,
sense gratification.
sense gratification.
Labhaya,
Labhaya,
attainment of.
attainment of.
He,
Exactly.
Smritaha,
Smritaha
is described by the great sages.
is described by the great sages.
Translation. All occupational engagements
All occupational
are
engagements
certainly meant for ultimate liberation.
are certainly meant for ultimate liberation.
They should never be performed for material gain.
They should never be performed for material gain.
Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. So, continuing with the theme of our fundamental dharma is to perform bhakti. But when we perform bhakti and if we get material gains, we should not divert our attention from the Lord and preoccupy ourselves with sense gratification. And anyway, Suta Goswami is telling the sages, whatever duties you perform as per your varnashrama, no duty should be performed for material gain. Because all duties are to be performed to achieve liberation. That means in Kali Yuga, all of us are performing all our duties mainly for material gain. because we are concerned that the Lord will not take care of us. Only we have to work hard, and only then you'll have sufficient food and sufficient property and sufficient finances, etc. We think only we have to work hard. The Lord is not going to give you anything. So everything that we do is meant for liberation. And even if you perform bhakti and you get material gains, it should not be used for sense gratification. Now, there are varying levels of bhakti. As we said, we're not at that bhava stage. We're still in the sadhana stage. So our bhakti is mixed. It's mishra bhakti. It's not pure bhakti. Prabhupada writes, we have already discussed that pure devotional service to the Lord is automatically followed by perfect knowledge and detachment from material existence. But there are others who consider that all kinds of different occupational engagements, including those of religion, are meant for material gain. So if you follow the Karma Kanda portions of the Vedas, you can get what you want by performing by following the type of rituals, the type of worship, the type of yajnas, the type of sacrifices, the type of austerities. You name it, it is there for whatever desire that you have. So people think religion means, just reciting shlokas and feeling good about performing yajnas. So many of us practice religion, spirituality, etc., more as a pomp to show off. Because if somebody recites some very complex mantras, we are very easily impressed. So very complex, hard to recite mantras make us feel good. That is not real religion. Real religion is to really actually be connected to Krishna. And for that, you don't need complex mantras. We just need the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Religion is actually practiced for a purpose. The purpose is to love Krishna. The purpose is not to exhibit pomp. The general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or any other occupational service. Even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered. And most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. So there is one website, although I shouldn't probably name the website. There is a very famous website where any material desire that you have, you can just log into that website, search for what kind of pujas need to be done to achieve that ultimate material objective. Doesn't matter what it is. They will tell you what all you should do, and all you have to do is to pay them the sufficient funds. They will do the pujas and whatever offerings on your behalf, and then they will tell you it's completed and now you will benefit from those results. We'll talk about that website later. But I discovered that website in the process of working in our temple. So anyway, it says, even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered. And most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity, which means you're doing it for selfish reasons. Everything that you're doing, all the puja, and all the austerity, etc., everything is for long life or benefit, some material benefit. Why are such so-called men of religion allured by material gain? Because material gain can enable one to fulfill desires which in turn satisfy sense gratification. This cycle of occupational engagements includes so-called religiosity, followed by material gain, and material gain followed by fulfillment of desires. So it's a vicious cycle. You pray, you get the outcome. Whatever outcome you get, you do use it to satisfy your desire, and it just keeps going on. It's a cycle. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men. But in the statement of Suta Goswami, as per the verdict of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this is nullified by the present shloka. It says none of us should perform any religious activity for the purposes of material gain. It should be for spiritual gain. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. How material gain should be utilized is described as follows, which takes us to the last shloka which we will do today, which is the 10th shloka of chapter 2. Kamasya nendriya pritihi
Kamasya nendriya pritihi
labho jiveta yavata
labho jiveta yavata
jivasya tattva jignasa
jivasya tattva jignasa
nartho yasceha karmabhihi.
arto yasceha karmabhihi.
Our meaning, kamasya,
Kamasya,
of desires,
of desires,
na,
na,
not,
not,
indriya,
indriya,
senses,
senses,
pritihi,
pritihi,
satisfaction,
satisfaction,
labhaha,
labhaha,
gain,
gain,
jiveta,
jiveta,
self-preservation,
self-preservation,
yavata,
yavata,
so much so,
so much so,
jivasya,
jivasya,
of the living being,
of the living being,
tattva,
tattva,
the absolute truth,
the absolute truth,
jignasa,
jignasa,
inquiries,
inquiries,
na,
na,
not,
not,
arthaha,
arthaha,
end,
and
yaha cha iha,
yaha cha iha,
whatsoever else,
whatsoever else,
karma bihi,
karma bihi,
by occupational activities.
by occupational activities.
Translation: life's desires
Life's desires
should never be directed
should never be directed
toward sense gratification.
towards sense gratification.
One should desire
One should desire
only a healthy life
only a healthy life
or self-preservation,
or self-preservation.
since a human being
Since a human being
is meant for inquiry
is meant for inquiry
about the absolute truth.
about the absolute truth.
Nothing else
Nothing else
should be the goal of one's works.
should be the goal of one's works.
Categorically, Suta Goswami is saying, don't chase material desires. You are in a human form. The human form is very rare. It's only in the human form one can approach self-inquiry, self-realization, and therefore, any activity that you undertake, at best, you can engage in those activities to lead a healthy life, to protect your physical body, just so that you can practice spirituality. So repeatedly, Suta Goswami is telling that our only endeavor is bhakti, nothing else. In the process of wanting to perform bhakti, we can take care of our basic bodily requirements, including our health, including protecting ourselves. Prabhupada writes, The completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed towards the fulfillment of desires and sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion, or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. So Prabhupada is saying no matter what facet of life, whether it is politics, social service, this ism, that ism, everything is tainted with self glorification, self satisfaction, etc. In the political field, the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The voters adore the so called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own self satisfaction, they dethrone the leaders. So there are pay for vote schemes in many, many countries. In some countries, it happens openly. In some countries, it happens surreptitiously. So, unless the leaders promise the voters, we will give you nice big, tax cuts, rebates, material gains, citizens are not satisfied. If the leaders are not, the politicians are not able to deliver, finished. The voters just change the leader. Hope the next leader will give them what they want. And give them what they want is all material. The leaders must always disappoint the voters by not satisfying their senses. The same is applicable in all other fields. No one is serious about the problems of life. Even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become one with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. Here, Prabhupada is talking about the Brahmavadis who want to merge with the Supreme Lord. And by merging with the Supreme Lord, they are happy to give up their individual identity. And when you give up your individual identity, there is no scope for service, devotional service. So that is also sense gratification. Prabhupada calls it spiritual suicide. You work so hard on the path of sadhana only to want to merge with the Supreme Lord and not to want to serve Him. But the Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self preservation and not for sense gratification. Because the body is made of senses, which also require a certain amount of satisfaction, there are regulative directions for satisfaction of such senses. So the Shastras don't say torture yourself. Shastras say you have to do what you have to do to take care of it. But don't be overly preoccupied with taking care of your body and your bodily requirements, which includes your family, society, etc. But the senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. For example, marriage or the combination of a man with a woman is necessary for progeny, but it is not meant for sense enjoyment. So even marriage, activities within the marriage between the husband and wife is also restricted. In the absence of voluntary restraint, there is propaganda for family planning. But foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is search after the absolute truth. What a beautiful sentence Prabhupada has written. In modern day life, societies say that a man and woman can enjoy themselves unlimitedly because the only fear there is for a man and a woman is the production of a child. If the child comes, enjoyment may have to stop for some time. So if you want unrestricted sexual enjoyment, oh, there are many, many ways you can do it. The woman can take the pill, the man can use other methods. So many different options are there for couples to enjoy themselves unrestrictedly. And Prabhupada says the best family planning method is when you fall in love with Krishna, then you're not going to worry about other things. If at all you want to produce progeny, you will do it for the purposes of bringing that soul into this world, just for the purposes of releasing that soul back to Krishna. So that's the greatest act of sacrifice that a man and woman can perform, is for themselves to practice spirituality and to produce children to deliver them back to Krishna by teaching them spirituality. Seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. When you're busy trying to find Krishna, you have time for nothing else. In every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth. And that sort of engagement will make one happy, because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. When all of your time is given to Krishna, there's no time for you left for sense gratification. And what that absolute truth is explained as follows. And as follows will be Shloka 11 onwards, which we will pick up next Sunday.